Welcome to Wellsprings Community Church.
If we could have the first slide up, please, Tyler. Our next set of talks from here through to the summer is going to be based on what is commonly known as the Sermon on the Mount. And each week we're going to be looking at a little bit of that. And it follows on from the series before Easter when we were looking at signposts to the cross and Jesus' journey and the various signs that he gave to show who he was and what his purpose was. And now we're moving into what life is going to be like for people who follow him. And when I was reading it, it struck me that those of us who've become Christians, who've accepted what Jesus was and listened to what was spoken about before Easter, started on a journey, and it's a long journey, it's a pilgrimage. And it reminded me of the South West Coast Path, which I would very much have liked to have walked in its entirety. It's never going to happen. But if you start at Minehead with the ambition of ending up at Poole, that is a long way. And there will be days when you're walking along a lovely flat piece of green path, bright sunshine, sea for miles, pleasantly warm, and life is wonderful. And there are times when you're climbing uphill, and you climb quite some hills, and the rain's pouring down, and all you can see is the path just in front of you and the path just behind you. And you have to keep in mind that actually your goal is a long way away, and that there will be a restaurant and a good night's sleep and whatever else when you get to Poole. And when we read the Sermon on the Mount, it sounds like a lot of rules and regulations. Do this, don't do this. I said do this. The rabbis say do this. I say do something else. And Jesus' intention is that we would get around on this long pilgrimage with as few stumbles as possible, with as few self-inflicted sprained ankles as possible. And his purpose is to get us to our destination, to be with him. So, we have to be positive because Jesus intends it to be positive. We're reading from Matthew's Gospel through this series. If any of you don't have a Bible of your own, we have got some Matthew's Gospels that you can pick up, and you'll be able to read it for yourself, just to prove that I'm not telling porkies, or perhaps to pick up on things where you think I'm wrong. But anyway, do help yourself to one if you would like one. Jesus went up on a mountain, the Bible says, and sat down and spoke to his followers, his close disciples and a crowd around him. That was the best sort of picture I could find. It might have looked possibly something like that, is the best you can hope for. But anyway, it gives you an idea of what the scene might have been like. And he spoke to his disciples in particular, but obviously the crowd could hear him as well. Went up high, not very high probably, but just high enough up so that his voice would travel. So he was up a mountain, talking to his disciples, and as I said, talking about what life following him would be like, what he expected it to be like, what he wanted it to be like. And why? Well, he wanted that people would get to their destination. He wanted us to relish our Christian lives, even when the times are difficult and we're cautious not to step to one side or we end up in the Bristol Channel, or the other side and we end up in the dark depths of Cornwall. We stick strictly to the path, and he's trying to give us some guidance, and he wants us to get to our destination. Before we get to the bit that we're going to be looking at, he gives what are called the Beatitudes, which is one of those things which really turns the world upside down for Christians. He says the values that you need to imbibe are not the values of the people around you. These are not the values that people on television with their celebrity status would go for. And then he says, you, so that is you and me, are the salt of the earth, and you are the light of the world. And he was saying this to a crowd of people who, at that point, didn't know an awful lot about him. But in choosing to follow him, he says, you are the salt of the earth, and you are the light of the world. Sometimes think, well, I will be the salt of the earth after I've had 20 years training. I might be the light of the world sometime. It's a bit like a guy I heard talk once who was appointed as an information officer in the army in the days of conscription. And he was asked to find out some information by his commanding officer. And he said, well, I don't know where to look. And he said, well, you are the information officer. You may only have come in this morning, but that's your job. Get on with it. It's rather like this, isn't it? Jesus is saying, you are the salt of the earth. Well, get on and be the salt of the earth. You are the light of the world. Get on with it. So, let's take our first reading, which will be the passage that we're thinking about this morning.
Verse 7. Do not judge, or you too will be judged. For in the same way you judge others, you will be judged. And with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. Why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye and pay no attention to the plank in your own? How can you say to your brother, let me take the speck out of your eye, when all the time there is a plank in your own eye? You hypocrite, first take the plank out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye. Then verse 12, so in everything do to others what you would have them do to you, for this sums up the law and the prophets.
Thank you. It's quite clear from other things that we read in the Bible that Jesus didn't intend us to not use our critical faculties, to not use our common sense. There are plenty of places in the Old Testament and the New which distinguish between foolish people and wise people, which usually means ungodly people and godly people. The kings in Israel were judged at the end of their lives by whether they were godly people or not godly people. And Jesus himself says later on about the man who builds on the rock of the word of God, that is a wise man, and the man who ignores the word of God is a foolish man. And indeed, if you get a knock on your door on a dark evening and you go to the door, you would be quite sensible perhaps to stick your head round the door cautiously and make sure it was somebody that it was safe to let in. There might be some, if you see somebody outside with a balaclava and a Kalashnikov, you would probably say, no, I probably won't let you in. We do need to judge. We do need to use our sense. And God clearly wants an ordered community. He expects us to administer justice, to know the difference between right and wrong. But what Jesus is talking about is about the judgments and condemnations that happen in our ordinary lives. When I set myself up as a moral guardian, critic of other people's behaviour. The Pharisees were well known for having a very hard line on various things. You know, you cannot do this on the Sabbath. You cannot mix with those sort of people. You can only eat with those sort of people. You've got to wash in a certain way. And someone has said these hard line pressure groups, of which we seem to have quite a lot these days, create a moral climate in which everybody looks at everybody else to see if they're keeping their standards up. Sexual morality might be one of them. Perhaps even using your right recycling bins might be something else. Oh, they've put a bottle in the green bin. I'm going to open my net curtains and watch what they're doing next week. Negativity, spitefulness, cynicism, sharpness, a destructive vice of judging people, condemning people. One of the later writers in the Bible, James, expands this a little bit. So if we can have our second reading from James. It might even be the other James. That one. The other James, yes.
My dear brothers and sisters, as believers in our glorious Lord Jesus Christ, never think some people are more important than others. Suppose someone comes into your church meeting wearing nice clothes and a gold ring. At the same time, a poor person comes in wearing old, dirty clothes. You show special attention to the one wearing nice clothes and say, "Please sit here in this good seat." But you say to the poor person, "Stand over there," or "Sit on the floor by my feet." What are you doing? You are making some people more important than others, and with evil thoughts you are deciding that one person is better.
I don't know about you, but I don't generally go around with what most people would think were evil thoughts. I don't go around wanting to knock someone's head off or hoping that a bus would come along and knock them over.
Evil is against God. Anything that's against God is essentially evil.
Just taking my next point. Yes, if bringing people into faith is going to be God's greatest joy, perhaps putting people down and disrespecting them or just ignoring them is in God's eyes evil thoughts. Remember Tiff speaking here about the temple and how certain people were blocked from getting into the temple and how Jesus raged about that. I wonder, is Jesus outraged when I put the fence of my evil judgment in the way of people that I know are coming to worship? Do I block them by the way that I treat them? Why do I find it so easy to judge? Seem to have lost the slide on that. Why do I find it so easy to judge? I don't know about you, but when I was growing up, at school we had end-of-year exams in every subject, and all those results were added up, and as a result of that, you got an overall score of where you were in the 118 people in your year. So you knew whether you were 33rd or 37th. And if you were 33rd in the A set, there was a very good chance you would be pushed down to the B set next year. So you could be brilliant at maths, but if you were awful at French. And so everybody in the school knew exactly where they were in this hierarchy. There's also this natural instinct, what they call fast thinking, of a sort of animal reaction when you meet somebody that you immediately judge, are they safe or are they unsafe? Are they a risk? Am I going to get on with them? And it's only when you think about it more slowly that you gradually get to accept people and see a bit more of them. How about the papers and the internet and television? All the things that I need to be cool and all the things that other people haven't got, and so they're not cool. And sometimes I just feel threatened, uncomfortable with people who aren't just like me. And it's easier to just put up a 6-foot fence and say, no, they can stay out there, thank you. And I want to establish my own status by reference to the faults I see in others. I may not be all that good, but I'm not as bad as them. We'll have that one. When I was thinking about the people of my acquaintance, I thought of a dartboard. And the little red dot in the middle, not that I was going to throw darts at them. I could see some of you were thinking like that. The little red dot in the middle is the one or two people that I would really open my heart to. And then the green bit might be my close friends, both of them. And then as you go out, there would be people that I know a bit better, but not very well, and then people I know a bit less, and then people towards the outside who I really struggle with, and people out in the doubles ring who actually I really rather wish they weren't there, or I wouldn't miss them if they weren't. And I asked Tiff whether he thought that was normal kind of reaction. Is that just me being a particularly awful Christian? And his comment was, no, he thinks actually, if we're really honest, most of us would have people out there that we really struggle with. Probably for some of you here, that outside ring includes me. Quite possible. You find me difficult to get on with. Can't stand me, I don't know. But there will be somebody in your circle of people that you know that you perhaps have that difficulty with. If you've all sorted that out and you don't have that, nothing in common with me, that's brilliant. So why should I not judge? Well, first of all, saved by grace. God has picked me to show his love to me, not because I'm this or that, or because I can do this or that. It's all unmerited. Who am I to say that anybody else is not entitled to the same love? I've not achieved so many brownie points like saving the old co-op stamps or a loyalty card and worked my way up to a point where God will accept me. I'm accepted in Jesus because of the cross. Who am I to say that that is not open for everyone? I'm saved by grace. It's not of myself, it's the gift of God, not of my works, so that I can't boast. God tells me not to discriminate. If you remember, those of you who know your Bibles, when Peter had this vision which told him that actually it was okay for him to go to a Gentile's house and eat with Gentiles. That must have been a horrific thing for him to hear at the time. That God wanted him to understand that the gospel was for everyone, even those who he thought were beyond the pale. And then there's this temptation to look down on others for what I see as their failures, which is really playing God, isn't it? It's making myself out to be the arbiter of who is and who isn't. No way should we be playing God. And we will be judged in the same way. I tended to think that perhaps that is, if I judge people for being a gossip, I will be judged when I gossip. When I judge people for doing something else, I will be judged for that. Having read this again and again, I think what the situation is that I will be judged for judging. We've had instances recently in the last couple of years, haven't we, of people being judged on the same basis on which they judge other people. Why was there such a scandal over the parties in Downing Street? It wasn't that of itself. It was the fact that they were telling everybody else not to meet. And so we judged them according to the standards by which they were judging us. There's a quote that I quite like, if it's on here. Don't judge my story by the chapter you walked in on. We will meet all sorts of people, And we, rather like Kath, we found out things on Friday that we didn't know. Don't judge my story by the chapter you walked in on. Let's remind ourselves of the reading again in a slightly different version.
Don't pick on people. Jump on their failures. Criticize their faults. Unless, of course, you want the same treatment. That critical spirit has a way of boomeranging. It's easy to see a smudge on your neighbour's face and be oblivious to the ugly sneer on your own. Do you have the nerve to say, "Let me wash your face for you," when their own face is distorted by contempt? It's this whole travelling roadshow mentality all over again, playing a holier-than-thou part instead of just living your part. Wipe that ugly sneer off your face, off your own face, and you will be fit to offer a washcloth to your neighbour.
So what is my plank? Plank, of course, suggests an obstacle far greater than the fault that you're seeing in other people. And I suppose when I've thought about it, and I take all the possible comparisons back to their source, I find the big plank is actually my failure to recognise my own ill-informed and presumptuous and frankly ungodly judgmentalism as a sin. Failure to recognise my own sin. And that is my plank, that is the thing that stops me. What can I do? How can I make some progress? Be honest with myself. Think about the people that you know. Identify, name the people that are a problem for you, that you find it hard to understand or to manage. Be specific. Be honest with God about where you stand. Open up to him. He already knows. But until we're honest with him, it's difficult for him to help. Pray that God will help me to deal with that person or that issue. If it's a lot of people that have the same thing that causes you grief, ask God to help you to deal with that. Because in our fallen nature, as fallen people in a fallen world, we are going to struggle with this without God's help. It's only by his Spirit that I can tackle my tendency to judge people. Pray for the good of that person. Not that they will change to be the sort of person that you want them to be. If you're a Labour supporter, don't go praying that all your distant friends will turn from conservatism to Labour. Pray that they will be drawn to God. Pray that they will know God's peace. Pray that you will be able to understand them. Certainly one of the things that I've found has helped me is that when I pray for someone for their good, for their best interests, it very much helps me to get alongside and work at it. I showed you that picture of the footpath. There will be times when life is hard. There'll be times when we struggle. We just have to keep on working. I had a book for Christmas, which I'm gradually working through, which is nothing about this subject really, but the title grabbed me, and it's A Long Obedience in the Same Direction. And basically saying, keep plodding on. Where you're going, know your destination. Keep heading in the right direction. Don't wander off. Jesus never said the path would be easy or comfortable. Last week, a couple of people mentioned about a sense that God has something about to happen here at Wellsprings, and that we should be ready for it when it happens. You may not think it's the case, but maybe it is, that each of us needs to face up to our own judgmentalism. Maybe we get on very well with most people, but there's just those few that we need to think about in specifics, not generalizations, something that we need to tackle. Think about that for a moment. Think about the names of people in your life. And if the music group would like to come and join us, we'll stand and sing, Lord, I come to you. Let my heart be changed, renewed, flowing from the grace that I found in you.